What I need people to understand is that, yes, change can be a little bit scary. Sometimes change can have its ups and downs, but sometimes change can help flesh out things that just were good, but just couldn't reach a whole nother level. And I know some people will say, no, 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 just leave it alone, just leave it be. But I will say, I watched the original DuckTales back in the day. Not when it was initially airing, no, no, no. I was much too young for that. Like, I was not even born when the original DuckTales came out. So, if you say, oh, you're just being ignorant, you know nothing about the original DuckTales, I mean, like, I did watch it. I mean, it finished airing by the time I was born, but I did watch it when the reruns were coming on. You know, when it was part of the Disney afternoon, I remember watching it along with Goof Troop, and when Quack Pack was going on, I was trying to line up the timelines and all that good stuff, and Darkwing Duck. I had a lot of fun with DuckTales, especially the DuckTales movie. Oddly enough, the one DuckTales episode that stuck with me the most, because I think I had it on, like, it was recorded on a VHS for some reason. I don't remember why, or if there were other episodes on it, but it was episode 52, Duck to the Future, where Magica De Spell sends Scrooge into the future, where she's stolen his #1 dime and taken over his company. I took that verbatim from the wiki. But I remember that episode mostly because it was interesting, and I wasn't sure who Magica De Spell was. I was very confused mostly on who Uncle Scrooge was, because I mostly remembered him from Mickey's Christmas Carol, and I was just like, okay, so he's called Uncle Scrooge even outside of that movie too? Because for some reason when I was younger, I could tell it's just like, oh, they're just playing characters. You got Mickey playing Cratchit, and Donald playing Scrooge's nephew, a little on the nose on that one. So I'm just like, okay, everybody's their own character. And then it's like, you get Uncle Scrooge, and it's just like, okay, who are you really? Uncle Scrooge. I'm like, really? Like, that always threw me when I was younger, but I always remember that one episode because it was just like, Scrooge went to the future, and I always remember Huey, Dewey, and Louie were like these businessmen, and they were in suits, and they were super serious, and they didn't play games, and, you know, they never took chances or had any fun. And I remember being like, no, anything but that, not boring. Because I had this love for Huey, Dewey, and Louie, but they weren't always at the forefront of my mind, because I was never a big fan of the whole, they're essentially all the same character situation. Where it's just like, you could take Huey, Dewey, and Louie, mix them up, and then be like, okay, who's who? And it'd be like, does it matter? Like, who gives a shit? The only prevalent thing about them is one likes red, one likes blue, and one likes green. And sometime one of them likes yellow. It depends on the situation. But I was always fascinated by the series as a whole. And as I watched more episodes and got the gist of it, I would always wonder how it connected to Darkwing Duck, because they both had Launchpad, who, you know, was the pilot for both of them. And I always wondered what the connection was, and, you know, years later I'd get, oh no, they're separate continuities, and it's just like, that's boring. No, make them one continuity. But the idea of Huey, Dewey, and Louie being sent to live with their rich Uncle Scrooge, and then going on adventures and solving mysteries and rewriting history, it was pretty fun from time to time. And you had the housekeeper Miss Beakley, and Webby, who was just the girl, Gizmo Duck, who was the local hero, and he was a lot of fun, and Gyro Gearloose, who was the kindly inventor who just always made a whole bunch of mistakes. It was fun, it was interesting, it was fascinating, it was just an all-in-all good show for Saturday morning cartoons. Very rarely did anything go too far outside of the box. You watch a few episodes, you essentially know the entire series. And you had Scrooge going up against various different enemies, most notably like Magic and the Spell, of course. The Beagle Boys, who, eternal bad guys for the most part. Flintheart Glomgold, who is essentially just Scottisher Scrooge. And the series as a whole was fun. It was just fun. Just pop into Duckburg, go on an adventure, and be home by bedtime. It was as simple as that. Seeing the boys get in all kinds of trouble, Scrooge generally being a good person as a whole, but sometimes his hubris would get him into trouble from time to time. It was an easy watch. That was the benefit of the original DuckTales. But I always wanted a little bit more. For me, I had always wanted Webby to not just be the girl. Just be an annoying blabbermouth girl and all that. It's just like, no, do more with Webby. Actually have her be involved with things. Have a little bit more of Launchpad and, connect the dots with him being also a friend of Darkwing Duck. Do a little bit more of Scrooge. I especially felt that way once I learned about the Carl Barks comics and all that, and the extensive history of Clan McDuck. I'm like, dude, you guys had a whole wealth of content, and you barely scratched the surface of all of this stuff? Like, come on, guys. And worst of all, it's just, because I watched Quack Pack back in the day, and that was fun enough, having Donald and Daisy and the boys, because I didn't really get to grow up with that. I mostly grew up with DuckTales, and then you got Quack Pack, and it was pretty fun. For most people, they didn't like Quack Pack because it was such a departure from what we knew of for the boys, but I was fascinated because the boys had various different personalities, and we got to see how they could annoy Donald in a whole new way. And I like the idea of the boys having their own personalities and not just being copy-paste all over again. I like the idea of Donald being in the picture and going on the adventures. There were just things about the original DuckTales and I'm just like I wish I could have those things, because it would just make the series just a little bit better for me. But when the reboot was announced, I wasn't sure. I'm like, oh god, is this gonna be any good? Is this gonna be any fun? Is this just gonna be a retread of everything that we've seen before? But then the promos came out and it was just like, oh, the boys have different personalities. I'm like, okay, I'm interested. The boys are gonna go on more extreme adventures and stuff like that. It's just like, oh really? Okay, you have my attention. Oh, Donald's gonna be more involved in this. Dude, yes, that's what I wanted. Yes, please. And we're going to explore more of the McDuck family line. I'm just like, dude, you're giving me almost everything I could possibly want. Yes, give it to me. Give it to me. But when it aired, it was even more than I could have hoped for. Like, I'm gonna be real. DuckTales, the reboot, is everything I could have ever wanted from a reboot. It took all the concepts that I loved in the original and cranked it up to an 11, and then just threw in the sensibilities of the more modern adventure animated series. I mean, yeah, it takes a lot from Gravity Falls, but I'm just like, dude, Gravity Falls, that ended on a high note. There was stuff to take from Gravity Falls by the end of that series. The mysteries, the adventures, the comedy, the fun. Like, yes, give me more of that. More of that kind of stuff, please. The badass old guy who leads a bunch of kids through the most harrowing adventures of your life. Like, dude, I am all on board for that kind of stuff. I like the exploration of Scrooge and his relationship with his family, with Donald, with Della, with his mother, his father, his sister. The stuff that we didn't get that much of in the original DuckTales. It's just like, yes, you have so many other avenues to explore in this new DuckTales, because the original, I mean, it did all the adventure stuff. It had all of the just fun, just random fun adventures, going out in the world, exploring, getting this, that, and the other. It did all of that. Give me a story that explores the relationships, the character, the family, the drama, just how these characters play off of and interact with each other. If the original DuckTales was all about the adventure, the reboot is all about the family. And that literally is the message of this reboot series. It's the family, it's the relationships, it's the compassion. This series, the rebooted series, could have just kept going. It easily could have just kept going, but I'm glad they managed to just come to a solid conclusion by the end of the third season. I will say this until my dying breath. If you make an animated series, plan for 3 seasons. Have it planned out from the beginning and just go with it. Just do your thing. Tell your story, expand on your characters, all that good stuff. Because I have more respect for a series that knows when to have a solid conclusion than one that just keeps going ad nauseum and just kind of becomes tired after a while. I never got tired of the reboot, but I will admit there were sometimes I just wasn't interested in a story from the original. That wasn't all the time, mind you. There were plenty of fun stories for the original series, but I mean, there were plenty of stories that I sometimes just was just like, oh, okay, it's all right. Moving on to the next adventure. This adventure isn't doing it for me. Next adventure, stuff like that. But for the reboot, there was always something fun and interesting around every corner. And a lot of that came from the fact that all of the characters were just amazing. I can actually for once say Huey, Dewey, Louie, they're all different characters. Huey is the smart one. Dewey is the adventurous, courageous one. Louie is the money-grubbing one. But there's more to their characters than just that. And while Webby, they basically, for the most part, took Mabel and just copy-pasted, inserted character there, there's even more to it than just that. She's smart. She's talented, she's athletic as all get out, and her upbringing is just fun. It's fascinating, it's interesting. Everything about Webby in this show was an absolute gem. And it's not like she outshines the boys, no. Like, let me be real. Webby takes up all of, go over the various different characters. Huey, Dewey, Louie, Webby, Scrooge, Donald, and then later on Della. The 7 very primary characters to the series, and while Della doesn't really primarily show up until around halfway through the 2nd season, honestly, Webby takes up only like 1/6 of the series for the most part. And while the conclusion of the series really does bring her to the forefront, that's after everybody else really had their time in the spotlight. Like, each season really focuses on each of the boys, Scrooge, Donald, Della, like everyone gets their moment. Even the side characters, Gizmo Duck, Gyro, hell, even the enemies, Glomgold, Magica. There's a little bit of everyone sprinkled throughout this. Because I've heard people say it's just like, oh no, I don't want to deal with Webby, I'm not feeling her character and all that. It's just like, Webby is not the most important character to the series. They make her a better character overall, but to not give this series a chance because of something as simple as that, like, no, you're doing yourself a disservice. This series rocks. It does so much with just honestly building. This series builds upon itself from day one. You start off with Donald leaving the boys with Scrooge. Same way that the original started off, but with the way that it builds upon itself, bit by bit by bit by bit, until you see the entirety of the cast coming together with Scrooge to save the day here and there, and it's just like, it feels earned. It really does. And that's not to say that the original didn't have that, but there were just times when you wouldn't really have the entirety of the cast coming together for such monumentous occasions and stuff like that. And I remember the original DuckTales movie, Treasure of the Lost Lamp. I love that movie. I really did. But I'll be honest, the reboot, it definitely deserves a movie. Because while the Lost Lamp movie was a lot of fun, it was stupidly well animated, really good stuff. The Lost Lamp movie wasn't really anything to write home about. If I'm being honest, it's a great watch. But it's just like, it's just another movie. Shit, give me a movie about Magic of the Spell doing something, or Glomgold doing something along those lines I would have loved to have had. But with the reboot, it's just like, dude, it feels like they could do that. Like they could just build upon themselves and bring things to one next level. But at the same time, it's just like, shoot, with all the things that they dealt with, all the challenges they faced, what's more to have than anything else? What more could you really do? Because the reboot ran the gauntlet of content, of challenges for Scrooge to face off with, to stand up against, to just be involved with. And I know it's cheesy, but it really does highlight that family, even if you're not related by blood, and even if you are, can be the greatest adventure of all time. I really appreciate the reboot exploring those relationships, exploring these characters, just everything. And at every turn, it was just a great time. Every special that they had was an adventure. The season 1 premiere, Woo, was fun and a great introduction to these characters and everything that went on with them. The season 1 finale, the Shadow War, made Magic of the Spell such an intimidating figure. The season 2 finale, Moonvasion, was more fun than it had any right to be and more action-packed. And season 3? God, the things that season 3 explored. It was like they ran through most of their most necessary storylines in the first 2 seasons, and then season 3 they just had fun with. It was nothing but them just having fun. Because episode 12 of the 3rd season, which was a double-length episode too, Let's Get Dangerous, that had Darkwing Duck in it, it was so awesome, to the point where Disney just put it right up on their website, because it's just like, look, this is just too fun for you not to just go in and watch. Let's Get Dangerous was so fun. I loved everything about that. Just establishing Darkwing Duck and Saint Canard and all of his enemies, and having Scrooge and the gang involved with all of it. It was like the real DuckTales Darkwing Duck crossover I had always wanted. And the way things ended with the last adventure, just, oh man, I didn't want it to be the last adventure. I didn't want that to be it. And it was a great callback to the episode The First Adventure. It's like the first adventure and the last adventure. I loved all the specials, especially This Duckburg Life, which was just podcast where Huey was just narrating various different adventures that were going on in Duckburg. And it's just like, dude, you could have made that a season unto itself. And I gotta tell you, knowing that this series is over and that the characters will probably revert to the way we saw them in the original DuckTales, it makes me sad. It really does, because I've become so attached to the new portrayal of these characters that knowing that I might not see these versions of these characters ever again is an ultimate shame. Like, I feel sad that Don Rosa saying that there was not even remotely any kind of similarities to Barks' original stuff. It's just like, dude, they paid a lot more homage to it than the original DuckTales series did. And it was a lot of really faithful storytelling that mixed in with a lot of great stuff from the original DuckTales series. The original DuckTales may have had more episodes, but the newer DuckTales had more quality behind it. But it would never had that if it weren't for the original DuckTales being such a great series. If it wasn't for the Carl Barks comics and the Don Rosa comics being such wonderful series as well. The thing about a legacy series is that you can pay homage to everything that came before you and rework things in a way that just makes it fun, interesting, and almost new again. Hell, that's why I always loved the Sonic Archie comics, especially towards almost the end of its run, because they incorporated so many things throughout the universe. It's why I love the IDW Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles run, because again, it incorporated so many things throughout its universe. And that's the benefit of Transformers. That's the benefit of G.I. Joe. You have all these fun things that are added to the lore and to the mythos that can be incorporated and worked into a new series that takes it in a direction you might not have even thought about before. I don't know. I feel like you wouldn't lose anything by changing up Huey, Dewey, and Louie. That's all I'm saying. But I know that'll probably never really be the case, but it should be, because they finally were allowed to grow. They were finally allowed to be their own characters, to be developed, to be seen as individuals rather than a blob of colors. Huey, Dewey, Louie, Webby, Scrooge, Donald, Launchpad, Gizmo, Gyro, Glom Gold, Magica, they were really given the respect that they deserve. And that respect, I feel like that deserves to live on in some capacity. But the 2017 series will always be there. It'll always be an experience that I hold close to my heart, that I had a lot of fun with, and that I always remember as being one of the few times I got exactly what I had always wanted when I was younger, and so much more. And while I shouldn't be selfish and ask for it to just be immortalized, I want to be selfish, because it was that good. It was that fun. It felt like the next level of something I already loved. Felt like an adventure.